Is free will incompatible with our choices being determined? Let's consider. Hello, philosophers. I'm Chico. Welcome to the Philosopher Show, where we consider the greatest questions of human history. In the last video, we checked out compatibilism, and remember that was the idea that free will and determinism are compatible. Remember, determinism is the idea that everything that happens is determined to happen the way that it does happen. So it can't happen other than the way that it happens, including our choices. So when we're talking about free will, our choices can't happen other than the way that they happen. That leads us to the question, are our choices really free? Compatibilism said that yes, they are. They can still be free even if they're determined. Incompatibilism is the opposite of that. It says that no, they can't be free if everything is determined. So let's look at two very basic arguments for incompatibilism, and then we'll look more in depth at some greater arguments later on in this playlist. But these are two that were laid out very nicely by Derk, Pereboom, and Michael McKenna in their book on a contemporary introduction to free will. And they look like this. The first one is the basic leeway argument for incompatibilism. One, if a person acts of her own free will, then she could have done otherwise than she actually does. Two, if determinism is true, no one can do otherwise than one actually does. Three, therefore, if determinism is true, no one acts of her own free will. So remember, determinism says that things have to happen the way that they happen. So one possibility, one criterion of free will, or one possible view of free will is that in order to be free, we have to be able to choose other than the way that we chose, right? Like when we make a choice, in order for it to be a free choice, we have to have the ability to do otherwise. If determinism is true, this argument claims, then we won't have the possibility of doing otherwise. Why? Because our choices will be determined to happen the way that they happen. So and I gave the example last time of going to a restaurant. If I choose the salmon bowl, then if determinism is true, this argument goes, then I will not have the possibility of choosing anything besides the salmon bowl. I was determined to choose the salmon bowl, so I did not have the ability to do otherwise, to choose tuna. By the way, I should mention, when they say leeway in this argument, in their book, when they say the freedom of leeway, what they're talking about is the ability to do otherwise type freedom. So that's why it's called leeway in this argument. The second argument goes like this: the basic source argument for incompatibilism. One, a person acts of her own free will only if she is its ultimate source. Two, if determinism is true, no one is the ultimate source of her actions. Three, therefore, if determinism is true, no one acts of her own free will. So the idea here is that if determinism is true, ultimately you won't be the source of your choices. And why would that be the case? Well, let's say that I, again, choose my salmon bowl. What determined the fact that I choose that salmon bowl? Well, it could be something that is outside of me, like, let's say, fate or God or something like that. If that's the case, then definitely it wasn't my free will. If God comes down and says, you choose salmon bowl, then okay, then I have no say in the matter. But if it's determined like hardcore like that, like there's a possibility that God sets things up in a way that I can choose with my own free will. But we'll talk about that in a later video. But if it's the case that you could argue, but it's possible that your choice was determined by yourself. So what if the fact that you chose salmon was determined by the fact that you built up a taste for salmon by constantly eating salmon in the past? So those decisions that you made in the past determined the fact that you were going to choose salmon in the future. So isn't that a free will decision? Well, maybe, but then the question just gets pushed back further. What determined those choices, right? Why did I choose salmon in the past? and we might have the same answer pushed back further, and we could push the same, question back further, and we could keep asking this question. Well, what determined that action, and what determined that action? And ultimately, we're going to get back to either like the first moment that you actually could make a choice. The first moment you were cognizant and could make an actual decision, or possibly the first moment that you were born or something. We're going to get to a point where something is determining your decision before you could actually make a decision. And in that case, it determines all, like a chain, right? All the decisions that you make up into the salmon bowl that you're going to make. So you're not the ultimate source of your decision in this case. That's the argument. Now, interestingly, from this argument, you may wonder, okay, so you're rejecting compatibilism here. Where do you go from there? There are three different ways you can go from this, because compatibilism is really a conjunction. It's a conjunction of free will and determinism, saying free will and determinism are both true. Incompatibilism then would be the negation of a conjunction. And for the negation of a conjunction, you have three options. You can either negate the first conjunct, negate the second conjunct, or negate both of them. Right? So it could be the case that free will is false and determinism is true. It could be the case that free will is true and determinism is false. Or it could be the case that free will is false and determinism is false. All that we're saying is it's not the case that both free will is true and determinism is true. That's the only thing that we know. So actually, once you become an incompatibilist, you diverge pretty far away from other incompatibilists, depending on which one you choose. You could either think free will is true or free will is false and determinism is true. If you believe that free will is true, then you are a libertarian free will believer. If you believe that determinism is false, that's what you would be called. If you are a person that believes that free will is false and determinism is true, then you are a hard determinist. And I should say, and if you believe in both, then the free will is false and determinism is false. I should say this. So people that believe that determinism is false, like a lot of people believe determinism is false now. And that is because of believing determinism is false at the quantum level. So many people will think that at the quantum level, there is an interpretation or interpretations of quantum mechanics that are probabilistic, that give a statistical analysis of the causation at the quantum level, right? So I'm not a quantum mechanics expert, so I can't give you the whole lowdown, but the idea is that at that level, things don't happen in a determined way. They happen only probabilistically. But when it comes to the level above the quantum, right? Especially when it comes to the macro level, the level that we are at this level, that indeterminism goes away, and everything happens at a deterministic level, so that for all intents and purposes, you would be a determinist at this level, because the choices that are made at this level. So if you are a determinist, you could be a determinist and not be a full-on determinist. That's what I'm trying to get at, is like you could reject determinism at the quantum level, but accept it for all intents and purposes in this way, and say, well, I don't think free will is true because I think that determinism at this level is true, and free will decisions then are ruled out because they happen at this level. There are some libertarians we'll see that think that the indeterminism at the quantum level is actually sufficient for accounting for free will at the macro level. So it's not like a cut and dry break between the quantum level and the macro level. But that brings actually up another problem, which is interesting for the libertarian free will guys, which is, if indeterminism is true, does that help any? So if indeterminism is true, the hard determinists will argue that just means that things happen by chance, right? Like, what that means is things don't happen in a this is the way it's got to happen kind of a way, like cause and effect laid out mathematically kind of a way. It just happens willy-nilly. And if it happens like that, then you have no power over it. And if you have no power over it, right, if it just happens by chance and that you can't control it, then it's not happening by your free will. It's not happening by your control. So then they would say, actually, indeterminism is just as much of a problem for you as determinism is if you are a libertarian free will believer. If you're an incompatibilist that also believes in free will, you have just as much of a problem. So the argument goes. There are a number of responses that are given to this. One popular one is a view called agent causation. So the idea here is that when we talk about causation and determined causation, we're talking about event causation. So one event causes another event, and they always happen in a determined way. And once one event causes another event, that event needs to be caused by something else, right? So events always are caused by something else. But the argument goes, events could be caused by other events or by agents. And agents don't need to be caused by other things. So agents, or at least in their causing events, don't need to be caused by other things. That's the argument. So when you have, let's say, a hand moves a rock, right? The man moves the hand. So there's the event of the rock moving is caused by the event of the hand moving, and is caused by what? Caused by an event? No, it's caused by a man. So when we say, well, what caused the man? Well, nothing caused the man, right? The man is the one that's starting the causing. That's the idea between agent causation. But we'll do a whole nother video on agent causation. That's just a taste of sort of what's going to happen in the libertarian free will response and to the luck objection, which is what this is called. That's the idea for incompatibilism. So next we'll get into what is called the consequence argument. So stick around for that. That's a very important argument. And we'll check it out. Don't forget to like, subscribe, comment, share this video, ring the bell. And also don't forget to support this project. Patreon page, link in the description. See you in the next video. Adios.